Hi guys, how you doing? This is Ben, the Real Estate Pro, coming at you, hopefully going to kick you some knowledge. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about a controversial subject, a little bit of a controversial subject in the real estate industry, real estate and mortgage industry, I should say, this concept of dual licensing. Now, there are some gurus out there that are completely against dual licensing, and there are some people out there that are kind of in between, and others like myself that promote it. And for me personally, with what's going on in the market right now, because the market is kind of slow when it comes to mortgages and real estate, and with the NAR settlements that are going to be coming, that's going to be coming up here, and what's happening with that, as well as technology out there, I think dual licensing is going to be very, very important. And I'll go over the reasons why. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is what is dual licensing? Well, first, it's having a real estate license and an NMLS license or a loan officer license in the particular state or area that you work in. Now, there may be some states out there that do not allow for that. I'm not sure. I think Texas has some prohibitions. There might be some other states out there, but all the states that I do business in do allow for you to have a real estate license and a loan officer license at the same time. You can also utilize both licenses and provide services on both or on the same transaction. So you could theoretically be a real estate agent and a mortgage loan officer on the exact same transaction for your client. Now, I don't do that very often. Actually, it's very rare that I do, but that's basically what dual licensing is. All right, guys, so I need you guys to understand something, a concept here that I learned many, many years ago. There's the share of customer versus customer share. Now, customer share is, most people typically know what that is getting as many clientele from the pool of potential customers that are out there. So you, if you're a real estate agent, you want to try and get as many listing leads as you possibly can from the pool of possible listings out there. If you're a buyer's agent, you want to try and get as many buyers to come to you to try and go look for houses. Okay. Then there's also another concept called share of customer. And what that is providing as many services as you can for the same client. Okay. Or to your existing clientele. So that's something you need to understand. And like I said, it's going to become more apparent here as I go into the rest of my presentation. Guys, I think a lot of gurus out there don't understand what I mean by dual licensing. They automatically jump to the conclusion that I'm promoting people do both jobs. And I do not do that. If you are going to do both, be a real estate agent and be a loan officer, and especially if it's on the same transaction, you're going to need a team behind you. You really want to make sure that you have a plan in place because if doing both jobs all on your own is going to be very, very problematic. You want to leverage your time, and as long as you understand that concept of leveraging your time and providing the services that you need in order to be successful for your client, as long as you understand that concept, then I think you'll understand what I mean and what I'm trying to get at in this video. Now, there's something I call the compensation advantage. And if you are dual licensed, this is something that you do have, okay? Now, having both licenses gives you more options when it comes to getting paid on a transaction. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you get paid more. It's possible, but you have more options, okay? Now, real estate commissions and LO comp equal something I call the compensation pool. And guys, the compensation pool is just simply the funds that are available to me that are normally used to compensate a real estate agent and or a mortgage loan officer. Now, I certainly can use part of these funds to compensate me for my services because, we work hard. We certainly don't get paid by the hour, at least most of us don't. So we want to be compensated for our time. But also, a lot of this can be converted to benefit our client. And sometimes in some deals, this may be the difference between you having a transaction that you can actually close and make any amount of money on, and unfortunately having a transaction that's just not going to go anywhere. But I'll go into more of this, and it'll become more clear how this compensation pool can be used further on in this video. Now, there are some competitive advantages to being dual licensed. Number one, you're the single point of contact. Your client can just call you, and for all issues that are related to the mortgage and the real estate transaction, you're the person they would contact and get answers from. Not only that, it's kind of nice, at least in my experience, it's always been nice to have the full picture of the whole transaction. It helps me not only put the transaction together on the real estate side, but it can also help me put the loan together on the mortgage side. Just having all that information at my fingertips, and then also not having to go through a third party just to try and convey an idea. Now, the other competitive advantage is if you are dual licensed, if you do it right, you can crush the competition by providing a lower interest rate and fees on their mortgage. And overall, you can provide more value to your client. And guys, this is something that you need to understand is a single licensed real estate agent and a single licensed mortgage loan officer cannot compete with you if you're dual licensed and if you utilize and market your business the proper way. It is a competitive advantage that, like I said, any single licensed agent or loan officer just can't touch. You will run circles around them and you will crush your competition. Now, I gave this some thought, and the best way for me to explain to you how powerful this is for me to give you an example. And I was on YouTube. I was on a person's thread that somebody that I watch, or somebody's YouTube channel, I should say, that I watch quite frequently, just to kind of keep up with the news and what's going on in the industry. Now, this particular channel was more for mortgage loan officers, and I made the comment that I'm dual licensed and that I think dual licensed, to paraphrase, just kind of a better position to be in as a real estate professional. That's also the reason why I call myself a real estate professional, not a real estate agent or a loan officer, because I do both. So basically, what this person said was that I was double dipping. You can't do, or successful people in the industry, successful real estate agents don't double dip. In other words, they're not dual licensed. Successful loan officers, they're not dual licensed. So trying to juggle both jobs is very difficult to do and is counterproductive to being successful. And you know what's the crazy part here is I kind of agree with them if you're trying to do both jobs. But I think what a lot of people do when I say that I'm dual licensed is they make the assumption that I'm doing both jobs, and I'm not. But I'm going to go ahead and read to you my response to that, and I'll add a little commentary along the way. So I start out by saying, you're making some pretty heavy assumptions. Like I said, he was just assuming that I was trying to make the commission on the loan and also on the real estate transaction. For one, mortgages and real estate are very closely related. I'm sure, as you know, and most people that are loan officers and real estate agents, they know that mortgages, and even though they're two separate disciplines, they kind of go hand in hand. And in my opinion, they go very synergistically if aligned correctly. Mortgage companies are becoming more and more automated and take on many of the responsibilities and tasks that the loan officer once had to do, which is true. Like when I started back in 2003, I mean, everything was done by fax, and there weren't these online websites they had where, I mean, some of them you can go on and essentially underwrite your file in minutes and send it in. They didn't have that back then, not in the same way anyway. So an LO should be spending their time looking for business, especially in this climate. So since you don't have to spend a lot of time underwriting your file, putting your file together, since a lot of it's done for you, and most successful loan officers that I know have processors that kind of do that anyway, really our time as an LO should be spent looking for other clients. When I first started my mortgage business, this was back in 2003, one of the things that I noticed was whenever you hired a new loan officer and they came in, they always brought in their warm market. So, mom and dad might have needed to refinance, they wanted some cash out. They had other family members and friends that might have wanted to buy a house or refinance or whatnot. And for the first 90 days in the business, this new loan officer was very successful because they were closing the loans and making a lot of money. But after 90 days, and when they go through their warm market, they they disappear. Used to call them 90-day wonders because after 90 days, you wondered what happened to them. They just disappeared. They stopped coming into the office. And the reason why is because they spent so much time, and it's not that they didn't need to do that, but they spent so much time working on their loan file or just paying attention to the loan file and just taking time off, not really out there working. They weren't marketing themselves. They weren't out there trying to get new business. So once their warm market went away, they were out of business. So loan officers should spend a lot of time going out, marketing themselves in whatever fashion that they find productive and finding new business. And really, that's what loan officers and real estate agents should be doing. Second, in my experience, adding real estate contract services is pretty easy, and in many cases, we include it in it at no extra fee or a very small flat fee, usually $500 to $1,000. Okay, now my current setup, that's what I have. We charge a small fee for the real estate services, and it's just on top of what we already do as far as a loan. So I gave an example here. I have a client that found a property in an open house that they wanted to buy. And this happens to real estate agents all the time. Maybe you're working with a client, you show them 20 different properties, just can't seem to get one to stick. And then all of a sudden they just happen to go buy a certain neighborhood at a certain open house, and boom, they go ahead and want to put in an offer on a property that maybe you even know about, or maybe it's a property that they told you they weren't interested in, or the type of property they weren't interested in, but they just happen to see something they like. Anyway, so I put the contract together for them and sent it in with a pre-approval letter. Even though the seller was offering 3% 3% to compensate the buyer's agent, I didn't request a dime of it for my compensation. Now, if you've been following Sitzer Burnett and the new rules as far as buyer's agents and how real estate transactions have to go for the buyer now, you know that a buyer's agent has to go into a basically an agreement with their buyer day one before they even show a property. At least that's how the settlement reads at the moment. That may change in the future, but in general, what they want is they want you as a buyer's agent to agree to a certain fee from the buyer. And of course, most agents that I know, most buyer's agents that I know, are going to tell their client, look, I'm going to try and get it from the seller, but if you can't pay me, then, or if they won't pay me, then you have to pay me. Okay. So in this particular case, when I put the contract together and get a pre-approval, and even if they're offering, because a lot of sellers still offer it, they may not put it on MLS, but they do let their seller's agent or their listing agent know, hey, look, we're willing to come up with some money if you bring a buyer and if they need help, the buyer needs help compensating their buyer, or they can put it in the form of a seller concession. Hey, we'll do so much seller concession. So but in a lot of cases, they will go ahead and put up or be okay with paying some of or all of the buyer's agent commission, because that's kind of what's been happening for about the last 100 years anyway. That's kind of normal. Okay. Now in this case, even though the seller was offering 3% to compensate the buyer's agent, I didn't request a dime of it for my compensation. This is the part I think you guys really need to listen to, because this is where this is extremely powerful. Instead, I asked the seller to convert 2% of it to a seller concession for my buyer, since they were limited on funds for closing, which they were. I told the seller they could keep the rest. So even though they were offering 3%, I told them, hey, look, just give me 2, because that's enough for us, and you can just keep the rest. Now, that's something that typically doesn't happen in a real estate transaction, but think about how powerful that is. Since our offer netted the seller almost $9K more in sales proceeds, they took our offer. The listing agent thought I was crazy, which she did. I also offered my client the option of going borrower paid comp. And if you're a loan officer, you'll know what that means. So make a long story short, in order to get paid on a loan transaction, you can either be compensated from the lender or the borrower. Now, you may say, well, what's the big difference? Well, if the lender is compensating you, they bake it into the rate. So your client's going to get a little bit higher interest rate in that particular case. but they don't have to come out of pocket to pay you. And sometimes in a situation, especially if someone's buying a home and they're very limited in funds to close, sometimes that's the better option. You really have to sit down, explain it to your client, and then let them decide what's best for them. Um, so I'll just go back and read. I also offer my client the option of going borrow paid comp on the loan, which lowered their rate by over a full point and lowered their monthly mortgage payment. It didn't increase my payments closing costs because I was able to convert real estate commissions to seller concessions, which gave my client the option of using that money to compensate me or pay part of their closing costs. See, I was making money on the loan. In this particular case, it was 2%. So I made a handsome amount of money on it. And the real estate purchase contract and the associated paperwork, this is just my opinion. It's really not a lot of work. Now, if I was bouncing around town all over the place showing these people 20 properties, okay, I get that. But in this particular case, this particular scenario, it wasn't a lot of extra work. And as a matter of fact, it allowed me, in my opinion, to, because I was working both aspects of the deal, it just made everything work more synergistically to closing. Okay, that's just my opinion. All right. Um, if I was not dual licensed, I would never be able to bring that type of value to my client. If I had, if I was a loan officer and I had a real estate agent and I asked that real estate agent, hey, could you do this for free? Or could you do this for a flat fee and just, like $500 to $1,000, they would laugh you out of the room. They would hang up on you right away. And that's what's so powerful about being dual licensed. Okay. Um, I had uh, I had competing agents and loan officers on the deal, which I did, and I ran circles around them because they could never figure out how I was able to do what I was doing. They would never have been able to compete with me, or they would have never been able to compete with me because they were single licensed. Kind of what I was saying before. If you're working with two separate entities who are looking for two separate groups of compensation, in other words, they can't combine the two. Legally, they can't because they're not properly licensed to do so. Now, one of the things in the response that this gentleman gave me, or that I responded to, he's called me a unicorn, which means like a fictional character or maybe one of a kind, or whatnot. So I said, I know you call me a unicorn, but that's not the case. With technology changing, AI, the NAR settlement, etc., there are lots of creative business models we will see over the next few years. I don't mind being a unicorn, but what I want to avoid is being a dinosaur. If LOs and real estate agents don't start thinking outside the box soon, they may find themselves extinct. Think about it. So I think that's the best way for me to explain to you guys, kind of in a real world example, how powerful it is to be dual licensed. Now, you could make the argument, well, couldn't you make the real estate commission and also the mortgage loan officer commission, which this person was alluding to? Yes, but are you bringing value to your client that way? Are you really providing any type of advantage to your client by doing that? Are you able to save your client any funds or headaches by doing that? And then the other things like, doing two full-time jobs, especially if you're running around town, dude. I mean, it can be tough, especially if you want to do it all on your own. Now, me, even though I'm dual licensed and even though I have a particular system that I use that's relatively, it kind of, what I feel, my opinion, combines the two, I still have help. So it doesn't matter whether I try to do this on, or what I'm doing, if I'm trying to get both commissions or not, which, like I said, I'm not, because I don't feel that that provides my client value. And that's what people are looking for. Can you accomplish what needs to happen in an efficient manner that saves your client time and money and still gives them very top-notch service? And if you are in a similar frame of mind like me, I believe that operating this way does exactly that. Well, all right, guys, I hope this helps you a little bit and helps you understand exactly what I mean by being dual licensed and how I operate and how I think you should operate. And guys, remember, work smarter, not harder. Plan your work and work your plan. Be consistent and you'll find success. The other thing too is if you're going to embark in, in real estate at all or mortgages, whether you're single license or dual license like myself, you have to have a network. You have to have a team. They say teamwork makes the dream work, right? I have a processor, I have transaction coordinators, I have different people that help me because, and even when I was single licensed, I still had those people helping me. And you need to have that. If you really try to do this all yourself, it's just going to take a lot of work, and you might burn yourself out. You don't want to do that. It's about everybody having a role, everybody being good at that role, you managing everybody, and then the big thing is, you as a business owner, because that's really the way you want to look at it. If you're a real estate licensee or a broker, or if you're a mortgage loan officer, for many of you that work for a broker, you got to go out and get your own business, or go out and get your own clientele. It's just like having your own business. So you really got to go out and spend a lot of time finding new clients, making sure that you sit down with them, go over the options, and go over the advantage that they'll have working with you. All right, guys, hopefully that helps you. This has been the Real Estate Pro. We'll talk to you next time.